I'm Ashley, enjoying the tranquil life alongside my husband, John. Yet there's a recurring issue. My brother's wife, Rachel. Together, they have a 3-year-old daughter named Ada, our cherished niece, adored by both John and me. While it's enjoyable to have Ada visit occasionally, Rachel seems to bring her over almost every week. Ashley, could you look after Ada this week? Rachel asks, as usual. Sure thing. Ada, behave yourself, okay? Okay. Ada eagerly bounds from the entryway to our living room, full of energy. Assuming John, who's lounging there, will take care of her, I steel myself to speak with Rachel. John and I adore Ada, but having her over every week is becoming a bit overwhelming. Even though we work from home, I'm an illustrator and John is a programmer. We're both freelancers. As freelancers, we have the flexibility to adjust our schedules based on our workload, but it's challenging to juggle childcare during busy periods. However, ensuring our niece's safety is our top priority, so I find myself multitasking, working on my tablet while keeping a watchful eye on her. I feel guilty for voicing my concerns to Rachel, my brother's wife, fearing it might strain their relationship, but the burden has become too heavy to bear. I'm truly sorry, but could today be the last day we watch Ada? I ask her gently. It's only later that I realize my mistake. She arches her eyebrows and sharply rebukes me. You wouldn't understand, Ashley, not having children of your own. Raising kids is incredibly tough. You can't possibly comprehend the challenges we face with Ada. Her words pierce my heart like daggers. It's because I'm infertile, I confess, feeling the weight of the admission. John and I have always dreamed of having children. We talked about it before we got married. But despite our efforts, we couldn't conceive. After seeking medical advice, we learned about my condition, which makes pregnancy extremely difficult. We're currently undergoing fertility treatments, which are physically taxing and financially draining. Each month, the hopeful anticipation of starting a family brings immense emotional stress for both John and me. Being blamed for not understanding the challenges of parenthood strikes a painful chord, especially amidst our struggles. But her accusations don't cease. Unlike you two who stay cooped up at home, I'm a sociable person. I have many friends who depend on me. Today, I brought Ada here because I'm heading to London to visit a friend. You two, who lead reclusive lives and don't contribute to society, should be grateful that I'm doing you a favor too. If you understand, take good care of Ada and stop complaining. After Rachel's heated departure, her scent lingering in the air, I re-enter the living room. John, evidently privy to the confrontation, wears an unusual frown. I didn't want Ada to witness all that, that's why I stayed back. But that was too much, he remarks, his tone edged with irritation. It's been roughly a month since little Ada began her weekly visits. Sensing it's time to address the situation, I resolve to call my brother Chris. Hey Chris. Hey Ashley. What's going on? It's been a while. Everything alright? I had been pondering Chris's decision to leave Ada with us. Despite his usual demeanor over the phone, my recent clash with Rachel left me on edge. So, with a hint of frustration, I broached the subject. Hey bro, Ada is adorable and all, but having her over every week is becoming quite the challenge. John and I have deadlines to meet as freelancers, you know? Some consideration would be appreciated. Ha! Ada? She's sleeping right now, he responded. Confusion set in as Chris claimed Ada was at home sleeping. When he sent a photo of Ada asleep, it didn't match the Ada we knew. I countered with a picture of Ada playing with John, to which he asked, "Who's that girl?" The last time I saw Ada with Chris, she was still a baby, unable to walk. The realization hit me that the child regularly left in our care, supposedly Ada, might not actually be her. But then, why would Rachel bring her over? Chris and I exchanged puzzled looks. Suddenly, John, who had been silently absorbing our conversation, tentatively addressed Chris. Chris, I apologize if I'm mistaken and I know this might be impolite, but have you noticed anything odd about Rachel lately? John and I had discussed it numerous times. Rachel's behavior had changed noticeably since her parents passed away from illness. Family gatherings ceased altogether. The last time I saw Rachel a few years ago, she was still attractive but dressed more modestly. Recently, however, she's been donning vibrant colors like red and blue and flaunting flashy accessories. Chris appeared to have picked up on these changes too, his response tinged with a hint of melancholy. Yeah, maybe, he admitted before abruptly ending the call with a promise to follow up later. While we sympathized with Chris's situation, John and I couldn't shake the suspicion that Rachel might be unfaithful. There was little we could do about her possible infidelity other than trust Chris to handle it. Our focus shifted to uncovering the identity of the cheerful girl playing before us. Ida, you're 3 years old, aren't you? Can you tell us your name? We had always assumed she was our niece, never bothering to confirm her name. But if she wasn't Ada, we needed to know. My heart racing, I questioned the girl, who responded with a beaming smile. I'm Ada Johnson. I'm 3 years old. After a brief exchange of glances with John, we praised little Ada, trying to maintain our composure. You said that perfectly, we chimed in, hoping to conceal our unease. We carried on as usual, not wanting Ada to sense our apprehension. The surname Johnson was unfamiliar to us, leaving us uncertain of the child's origin. Despite our confusion, it was evident that little Ada was innocent in all of this. Hoping to aid my brother in his investigation, I messaged him on WhatsApp, informing him that the girl with us was Ada Johnson. His reply was curt, "Understood, thanks." Later that afternoon, my brother showed up at our doorstep with another person in tow. Sorry to impose, but I need to discuss something with Rachel when she comes to collect Ada. Would you mind if we wait here? He inquired, and I readily consented, still harboring resentment toward Rachel for betraying my brother. As the evening slipped into night, Rachel stumbled into our home, clearly intoxicated. I'm back, Peter. I'm here to take you home, she slurred, oblivious to the impending tempest. As Rachel casually strolled back, seemingly on the verge of breaking, I greeted her with a forced smile. Hey, welcome back, Rachel. You seem a bit tipsy. How about I get you some water? That'd be great. Is this your way of making up for the nonsense you spouted earlier? As Rachel entered the living room, her usual cheerful demeanor contrasting with her slightly inebriated state, Ada was engrossed in play on the lap of a woman. Rachel glanced at the scene with confusion, noticing the woman's disapproving glare. Who's that? Did you hire a sitter? Nice to meet you. I'm Katie Johnson, Ada's mom. What? Rachel's surprise was so profound she couldn't even grasp the glass of water I offered, stumbling backward until she collided with a corner and tumbled to the floor. I watched her sprawled there, offering no assistance, when my brother's voice echoed from the entrance. I've brought him. Why is Chris here too? Rachel, still on the floor, exclaimed as my brother ushered in a man with flamboyantly colored hair. Rachel blanched at the sight of the man, and he paled upon seeing Katie. My brother directed Rachel and the unfamiliar man to sit beside each other. Though unbidden, they both attempted to straighten up, but their posture remained uneasy, their eyes darting about with evident unease. Because it wasn't suitable to subject a child to such a tense situation, John, who had been entertaining Ada in the adjacent room, whisked her away. With everyone assembled, my brother assumed command, fixing his gaze on Rachel and the man. I never thought my close friend would betray me with my wife. Isn't that right? No. An acquaintance from Chris's high school years still kept in touch and occasionally visited Chris's home. Chris had always felt uneasy about the way Noah looked at Rachel. I always figured if Rachel was going to stray, it'd be with you. But to find out it's actually you, and you have the nerve to leave your own kid with my sister and her husband. What the hell, man? Chris, once a notorious troublemaker in their small Nebraska town, had since settled into a corporate job, but his confrontational side resurfaced when he faced Noah. At Chris's chilling accusation, Noah let out a pitiful scream. Oh no, he replied in a trembling voice before continuing. It was Rachel who initiated everything. She sought me out at my salon, specifically asking for me. She confessed she had feelings for me. You can't just put this all on me. You were just as involved. You two morons. The first thing you need to do is apologize. Chris's words prompted Rachel and Noah to start apologizing, or so I assumed. However, it became clear that Noah, who could calmly leave his daughter with strangers, wasn't operating on a normal wavelength. Noah, pointing at the tearful Katie, raised his voice. It's all her fault. She barely pays attention to me, so I felt lonely and cheated. If anyone's to blame, it's Katie. Don't you dare deflect. Katie's sudden outburst startled Noah. When Chris brought her closer, she exuded quiet elegance. I never imagined my husband would entrust Ada to strangers while I'm at work. I'm deeply sorry. The usually humble Katie's fury was palpable. What do you mean you cheated because you felt lonely? Have you no self-control? And leaving Ada with strangers. Why would you do such a thing? Katie's frustration was evident, and it's because Rachel mentioned her sister-in-law and her husband are childless with nothing but time on their hands. So they're a convenient option, right? But we may not have kids, but we work from home. We're not babysitters. I told Rachel this morning. We're struggling. We never imagined you were using us to care for your mistress's child as if it were your own. But is that okay? Maybe I'll be blamed for cheating, but I've just shown a childless couple what it's like to have kids. What? The voice that escaped, resonating deep like Chris's, drew my attention to Rachel, who bore a striking resemblance to her partner. She uttered a pitiful, "Oh no," before erupting. "This is none of your business, adults. We've been struggling to conceive. You were aware of that, weren't you? Your constant insensitive remarks have been infuriating. But I tolerated them because you're Chris's wife. Not anymore. Let me make it clear, you're incredibly rude. Bringing a stranger's child into our home without permission, and your garish makeup that doesn't suit your age, your overpowering perfume." When I finally voiced my long-held thoughts, Rachel flushed crimson, realizing she had no ground left to stand on. She bit her lip, remaining silent. Following that, Chris and Katie delivered a thorough scolding to Rachel and Noah. Predictably, both couples ended up divorcing, facing substantial financial burdens. Chris spread the news of Noah's affair with Rachel to his friends in Nebraska, and the gossip soon reached Noah's local hair salon. Noah, now the talk of the town, found himself unemployed after being fired. Rachel, previously a homemaker, struggled to secure employment, lacking work experience since she became a housewife straight out of college. Unsurprisingly, her job hunt proved arduous. Upon discovering her infidelity, Rachel's parents disowned her, leaving her to scrape by with sporadic odd jobs. Both Rachel and Noah lost not only their jobs but also their families due to their indiscretions, finding themselves in a pitiable state. To my surprise, fertility treatments proved successful for me. I'm pregnant, and guess what? We're expecting twins. John and I couldn't hold back tears of joy as we eagerly anticipate the arrival of our babies. We still maintain close ties with Ada and Katie, with whom we share a unique bond. Ada and Arnis Ada get along famously, often playing joyfully together. They even lovingly touch my belly, addressing the babies with, "Let's play together once you're born," which melts my heart. Despite my brother Chris and Katie being betrayed by their partners, they've committed to raising their children as single parents. John and I stand ready to assist in any way necessary. The four of us, John, Chris, Katie, and myself, have made a pact to collaborate in raising our niece Ada and the twins on the way, forging a resilient bond between us. My name is Ma, and until I turned 33, the most exciting event in my life was when the accounting firm I worked for switched from PCs to Macs. Not exactly thrilling, right? But then everything changed at a friend's birthday party. That night, I stood in the corner of a cramped living room, holding a soda and feeling uncomfortable in my too tight dress. The music was loud, way too loud for talking, but perfect for him, Charles. He was taller than most people, which is probably why he noticed me. He walked over with a confidence that made my heart skip a beat. "Hey, you're Ma, right?" His voice was clear even over the loud bass. Yeah. And you are?" I sipped my drink, trying to look calm. "Charles, I've seen you around. Mind if I join you?" He didn't wait for an answer, just stood next to me. "Not at all," I said, my voice nearly drowned out by the latest pop song blaring through the speakers. "So, Ma, what brings you here tonight?" he asked, leaning in. His tone was casual, but his eyes were intense. "Just here to celebrate Jessica's birthday. You know her long?" "Yeah, went to college with her. She keeps inviting me to these things. Can't say no, can I?" We laughed, and it felt natural, easy. "I get it. I work with her. She's kind of hard to say no to." "An accountant, right?" She mentioned it. He nodded like he already knew. "That's right. Numbers are my game," I joked, even though I usually found nothing funny about spreadsheets. "Sounds thrilling." He grinned, and I couldn't tell if he was teasing me or not. "Oh, absolutely. It's all wild parties and high stakes in the accounting world." We laughed again, and I felt at ease talking to someone genuinely interested in what I had to say. It was new, exciting, and a bit scary. "You want to grab some air?" he suggested, nodding toward the backyard. I nodded, grateful to escape the noise. Outside, the cool air was a relief. So, what's a guy like you doing in a place like this? I asked, trying to sound more confident than I felt. Just looking for a good time, I guess. And maybe someone cool to hang out with, he said with a smile that made his eyes crinkle at the corners. We talked about everything and nothing, movies, books we liked, how he was into graphic design but stuck in a corporate job he didn't love. It felt like we'd known each other for years. As the night wound down, he pulled out his phone. Can I get your number? I'd really like to see you again, Ma. I hesitated, not used to this kind of attention, but something about him felt right. Sure, I said, typing my number into his phone. He smiled, his whole face lighting up. Great, I'll call you. We should go out, just the two of us. Sounds good. I managed my stomach doing flips. I watched him go, a part of me still in disbelief that this was my life now. Maybe turning 33 wasn't so bad after all. Maybe it was just the start of something truly great. The days after Charles' call felt like a blur. Before I knew it, I was getting ready for our first date, my nerves all over the place since I didn't have much experience in this area. I chose a simple blue dress, nothing fancy, but I hoped it would do the trick. Charles picked me up at 7 sharp in his clean, well-kept sedan. Nothing flashy, but it suited him perfectly. As I got in, he flashed me a smile that could knock you sideways. You look great, Ma, he said. Thanks, I mumbled, probably blushing like a tomato. You look nice too. Dinner was at a cozy little French place he knew. The food smelled amazing, but my stomach was doing somersaults. We ordered pasta, him with some fancy sauce and me with plain old marinara. So, Ma, tell me something about you that no one else knows, he said, twirling his spaghetti expertly onto his fork. I chuckled, playing with my food more than eating it. Well, I'm pretty boring, but I guess not everyone knows I can solve a Rubik's Cube in under a minute. He raised his eyebrows. Really now? That's pretty cool. You'll have to show me sometime. Sure, I said, starting to relax a little. What about you? Any hidden talents? I make a mean breakfast burrito, he boasted with a grin. Best you'll ever have. I'll take your word for it. Maybe you can prove it sometime, I teased. The conversation flowed, and for the first time in a long while, I felt like I was exactly where I was supposed to be. The next few weeks were a whirlwind. We saw each other constantly. Charles would come over after work, and I'd meet him for lunch near his office. He showed me his favorite spots around town, little nooks I'd never noticed before. It was like seeing the city for the first time. Things took a serious turn when he invited me to meet his parents, Brian and Camille. They lived in a small, cozy house full of photos and little decorations. Camille hugged me the second we walked in. Oh, we've heard so much about you, dear, she said, squeezing my shoulders. She's lovely, Charles said, and I could tell he was pleased. We sat down to dinner, and the conversation was non-stop. So, Ma, Charles tells us you're an accountant. That must be interesting, Brian said, passing me the potatoes. It has its moments, I replied with a smile. Mostly just numbers, but I like the order of it. And how's your family? Camille asked, genuinely interested. They're good, thanks. My dad's a businessman, always busy, but he's been really supportive of me. It was all happening fast, but it felt right. It was as if everything in my life had been leading up to this moment, meeting Charles and feeling like someone finally saw me for who I was, not just some plain Jane accountant. One evening, a few months into our whirlwind romance, we were walking along the riverbank. The city lights reflected off the water in a postcard-perfect way. Maud, I've been thinking, he started, stopping and facing me. Yeah? I asked, my heart starting to race. I don't want to wait any longer. I know this is fast, but will you marry me? Just like that, my world changed. No hesitation, no doubt. Just a simple, yes, Charles, I'll marry you. The whirlwind didn't stop there. Soon after, I introduced Charles to my father. He took to Charles immediately, appreciating his straightforward manner and obvious affection for me. He's a good man, Ma, Dad said, giving his approval, which meant the world to me. So we got married. It was a modest wedding, nothing too extravagant, but it was perfect for us. I even found myself loving the way I looked in my wedding dress, something I'd never imagined. Smiling wide, I posted photos on social media, sharing my joy with friends and family. After the wedding, life didn't slow down. It picked up pace. Charles and I barely had time to savor our newlywed bliss before he suggested something big. Hey Ma, I've been thinking, he said one evening as we unpacked another box of wedding gifts in our cramped apartment. How about we move in with my folks? I paused, holding a coffee mug in my hand. Live with your parents? He nodded, looking serious. Yeah, they're not getting any younger, and I'd feel better if we were around to help out. Plus, it would save us some money on rent. It made sense, but moving in with the in-laws, that was sitcom territory. Are you sure they'd want us there all the time? Absolutely, he assured me. Mom's been hinting about it ever since we got engaged. Come on, it'll be good. 3 weeks later, there we were, pulling up to his parents' house with our lives packed into a bunch of boxes. Charles's mom, Camille, was waving from the porch before we even got out of the car. Oh, Ma, we're so thrilled to have you both here, she exclaimed, pulling me into a hug that was a bit too tight. Brian, Charles's dad, clapped him on the back. Welcome home, son, and you too, Ma. The house was cozy, stuffed with furniture that looked like it belonged in a museum, the Museum of 1973. I tried to keep a smile on my face, but I was already missing our little apartment. Charles sensed my hesitation. It's going to be great, you'll see, he whispered as we carried boxes inside. The first few days were an adjustment. Camille was constantly hovering, always popping into our room to ask if we needed anything. Just making sure you're comfortable, she chirped while I tried not to cringe at the invasion of privacy. One evening, we all sat down for dinner, Charles, me, Brian, and Camille. The conversation was painfully mundane until Charles dropped another bomb. So the house needs some major repairs, he announced casually between bites of meatloaf. I choked on my mashed potatoes. Repairs. Yeah, the roof's a mess and the plumbing's from the dark ages, he said. Brian nodded sullenly. We were thinking, Charles continued, avoiding my gaze, that maybe we could all chip in for the costs. I glanced at Camille, who was suddenly very interested in her plate. All of us. Well, I just got this pay cut at work, Charles muttered, so I'm a bit strapped at the moment. There it was. I felt a knot form in my stomach. I'll see what I can do, I managed to say, even though I wanted to say much more. Camille perked up, tears welling in her eyes. Oh, Ma, that would be so helpful. You're such an angel. The next few weeks were a blur of contractors and repairs. I wrote checks and smiled through gritted teeth as Camille gushed about how wonderful the house was looking. Brian slapped me on the back. You're really part of the family now, Ma. Part of the family, sure, the part that pays for everything. One particularly grueling day, after yet another round of expensive renovations, I felt the strain more than ever. I felt completely drained as I collapsed on our bed, exhausted. Charles came in and sat beside me. Thanks for handling all this, Ma, he said, sounding almost sincere. It's fine, I lied, staring at the ceiling. I just didn't realize how much it would be. He squeezed my hand. It'll all be worth it. This is for our future, right? Our future, I echoed, not sure whose future we were building anymore. As I lay there, listening to Charles' steady breathing, I couldn't help but wonder if moving in was the right decision. But there was no going back now. I was in this deep and had to see it through, whatever the cost. After the renovations, the house looked great, like something out of a magazine. Despite the financial strain, I felt a bit of pride looking around. We decided to throw a small dinner party to celebrate, just the four of us. That's when everything took an unexpected turn. We were in the middle of dinner, laughing and sharing stories, when Camille suddenly got quiet. The room felt heavy. She looked at Brian, then at us, her eyes teary. We need to tell you both something important, she said, her voice shaky. Charles and I exchanged looks. What's going on? I asked, my stomach tightening. Brian took a deep breath. The house, it's mortgaged. Heavily mortgaged. We owe $300,000, and the bank could take it away if we don't settle the debt in 3 months. My fork clattered to my plate. What? You mean all the repairs we just paid for? Camille started sobbing. We were ashamed and thought we could manage it. But after the repairs and everything, there's just no way. I felt like I was in a bad dream. All the money, all the effort, and it was for a house that wasn't even secure. So what are you saying now? My voice was sharper than I intended. Well, Charles started, his eyes avoiding mine. I was hoping maybe, Ma, you could talk to your father. Are you serious? I snapped, my voice rising. Ask my dad for $300,000? It's just, after his help, the house would be secure for us. For our future, Charles pleaded. Camille's sobbing grew louder, making me feel like the villain in this crazy drama. Please, Ma, it's our home. We've spent decades in this house. I was furious, but the tears and the pleading wore me down. "I'll think about it," I finally muttered, feeling trapped. The next day, I called my dad, hesitantly explaining the situation. To my surprise, he agreed to help, but on one condition. "I'll give the money, Mom, but only with a formal agreement, a receipt. I want everything documented." When I told Charles about my dad's condition, he wasn't happy. "Why does it have to be so formal? Can't he just trust us?" "It's $300,000, Charles. It's a lot of money, and he's just being cautious," I argued, feeling the distance between us grow. "He'll get his paperwork," Charles muttered, clearly annoyed. The paperwork was drawn up and the money was transferred. Camille and Brian were relieved, constantly thanking me, but the air between Charles and me had changed. There was a coldness that hadn't been there before. Just when I thought my life couldn't get any darker, tragedy struck. "Ma, it's Kayla." A voice came through the line, shaky and choked. "Your dad, he had a heart attack. It's bad." My heart dropped to my stomach. "What? How is he?" "He didn't make it, honey. I'm so sorry." The phone nearly slipped from my hand. "No, that can't be right," I mumbled, numb. I hung up and turned to find Charles standing in the doorway. "What's wrong?" he asked, his voice low. "My dad? He's gone," I managed to say before everything inside me broke and I started sobbing. Charles came over and put his arm around me, but it felt like being hugged by a stranger. "I'm sorry, Ma," he said, and it sounded sincere, but I was too lost in my grief to really hear him. Exhausted from another long day of funeral planning and dealing with the agency, I came home earlier than usual. I expected the house to be quiet, but as I inserted my key to the front door, I heard voices from the living room. It was Charles, his tone dripping with frustration and disgust, talking to his parents. "I can't do this anymore. Living with her is driving me nuts. It's too much," Charles complained. His mom, usually so sweet and understanding, replied in a stern whisper, "You have to hold on a bit longer, Charles. We need to figure out what to do with those receipts your father-in-law had. Ma has them now. The sooner I get out, the better. I'll grab those receipts and destroy them, and then I'll start all over again with that rich beauty I told you about." Charles's voice was cold and calculated. I felt a chill run down my spine. Here I was mourning my father, while the people I thought I could trust were plotting behind my back. They weren't the loving family I thought I married into. Instead, they saw me as a way to fix their financial troubles. Rage mixed with shock, but I knew I had to keep my cool. I slammed the door loudly, as if I had just come in, disrupting their scheming. "Oh, Ma, you're back early. How did everything go with the funeral plans?" Camille's voice shifted instantly to one of concern, her eyes wide with fake innocence. I forced a smile, my stomach turning. "It's all coming together. Thanks for asking." As I spoke, I could see the quick glances they shot each other, their faces a mask of fake concern. It made my skin crawl knowing their true colors, but I realized that showing my cards now wouldn't help. I needed to be smart. I needed to protect what was mine and possibly even get some justice for their deceit. The funeral was somber, the air heavy with grief and murmured condolences. But as the ceremony wrapped up and we returned to Charles' parents' house, the true colors became even clearer. As we gathered in the living room sipping on lukewarm coffee, the family I married into began to show their true colors. Charles's demeanor shifted, his usual charming facade crumbling away to reveal something more sinister. With a cold laugh, he looked straight at me and dropped the bomb. "Ma, pack your things. You need to get out. I've got someone else now, someone better." His words should have felt like a slap, and I pretended to be stunned. Before I could respond, Camille chimed in with a snide giggle. "We've really had enough of you, dear. We only put up with you for your money." "What about the house?" I asked, feigning disbelief. "The house that I paid to fix. The $300,000 I poured into it." Camille laughed harder, as if I had told the best joke of the year. "Oh, sweetie, this house is ours. You're nothing here." Charles's smirk widened. "And those receipts you're so proud of? Found them in your dad's house and burned them. They're gone." For a moment, I let them believe they had won, but then I couldn't help it. I burst into laughter, my reaction confusing them, their smiles faltering. "Why are you laughing? What's so funny?" Charles demanded. I wiped a tear from my eye, still chuckling. "You three are just pathetic. You think you're so clever. The receipts you destroyed were copies. The real ones are safe with my lawyer." The color drained from their faces. Charles's arrogance turned to panic. "You can't prove anything," he stammered. I can, and I will, I shot back, my voice steady and firm. Now, I want my money back. All of it, or my next call is to the police. Charles and Brian looked at each other, their earlier confidence replaced by fear. Brian, usually so bold and brash, began to plead. Ma, please, let's talk about this. We can sort something out. With the truth out and leverage in my hands, negotiations with Charles and his parents dragged on longer than I expected. It was clear they were trying every angle to sway the terms in their favor, but I wasn't about to budge. Look, it's simple, I stated firmly during one of our many discussions at their now legally mine kitchen table. The house gets transferred to my name in exchange for the money. That's the deal. No more games. Finally, they relented. We all agreed that the best course of action was to make everything official and legal. I insisted that everything be documented by a lawyer and confirmed with the proper papers. I want no corners cut, I emphasized. At the lawyer's office, the atmosphere was tense as documents were signed and notarized. I watched closely as each signature was applied, ensuring there was no room for further deceit. Once everything was finalized, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. I collected the documents related to the transfer and turned to Charles's mother, who looked deflated yet still carried a hint of her former haughtiness. I'll be keeping these in a safe place, I said, holding up the papers before slipping them into a folder, just to ensure no one is tempted to pull any stunts. With the legalities handled, the divorce proceedings were straightforward. Charles was quiet, his earlier arrogance nowhere to be seen. When the final papers were signed, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. A chapter closed. On the day they moved out, I stood on the porch of my now fully owned house and watched Charles, his mom, and dad carry their belongings to a rental van. Their movements were slow, the mood somber. I couldn't help but feel a mix of satisfaction and sorrow. This wasn't how I imagined my marriage ending, but under the circumstances, it was the best possible outcome. After everything settled down and I began to enjoy my newfound peace, word got back to me through friends about Charles and his situation. Apparently, the grass wasn't greener on the other side. His mistress had dumped him not long after our divorce, and his parents were now crammed into a tiny apartment, a big downgrade from the comfortable house they once had. It seemed karma had caught up with them quicker than I expected. Despite their situation, they started reaching out to me, bombarding me with calls and messages, probably hoping to weasel their way back into my life or, at least, my house. But I was done with their deceit. I blocked their numbers without a second thought and blacklisted them on all social media. It was liberating to cut the final threads that connected us. One afternoon, as I was enjoying the quiet moment with a book in my living room, there was a knock at my door. Peering through the peephole, I saw Charles standing there, a pathetic figure holding a bouquet of flowers. The audacity of it made me scoff. Opening the door, I couldn't help but laugh outright at the sight of him. Really, Charles? Flowers? He shuffled uncomfortably, the bouquet seeming to wilt along with his spirits. Ma, I've realized so many things. I was wrong, terribly wrong. Remember when you told me I disgusted you? I interrupted, leaning against the door frame, not hiding my amusement at his discomfort. What changed, Charles? Run out of options? He looked down, the shame clear on his face. I made mistakes, but I'm here to make things right. I shook my head, almost feeling sorry for him. Almost. You're not here to make things right, Charles. You're just desperate to get back to your comfortable life. But guess what? That life doesn't exist anymore. Not for you. His face fell, and he took a step back as if my words were physical blows. Ma, please. Save it. I cut him off sharply. I want you to leave. Don't come back here. We're done. Forever. Charles stood there for a second longer, his hope visibly crumbling. Then, without another word, he turned and walked away, his shoulders hunched in defeat. I returned to my book, feeling a sense of finality and relief. I smiled to myself, feeling the quiet of the house wrap around me like a comforting blanket. It was such a stark contrast to the chaos that once filled this space. The constant noise, the tension, the deceit, all of it was gone now. I could finally breathe deeply without the weight of worry on my chest. I was finally at peace, living life on my terms. I glanced around the room, taking in the calm atmosphere. The sun streamed in through the windows, casting a warm glow over everything. I realized how much I loved this house now that it was truly mine. The walls, once witnesses to arguments and schemes, now seemed to echo with serenity and contentment. I thought back to the days of turmoil and manipulation, remembering how trapped I felt. Charles and his family had taken so much from me, both emotionally and financially. But now they were out of my life for good. No bouquet of flowers or sweet talk could change that. Their attempts to manipulate me were over. As I sipped my tea and returned to my book, I felt a sense of triumph. I had faced betrayal and heartbreak, but I had come out stronger on the other side. I had taken control of my life and my future. The peace I felt now was well-earned and deeply cherished. I was truly finally free. Free from lies, free from deceit, and free to live my life as I chose. The future stretched out before me, full of possibilities and opportunities. I smiled again, knowing that whatever came